Hello, I'm sneaking in some time to film and maybe yap a bit about my reading. So it is Wednesday, and I don't know, thank you so much for the warm welcome. I've been looking through some comments, and I think I'm in like this in-between phase. It's like mid-October now, and I've been deciding what to read next on my Kindle, but I thought it'd be nice to hop in and like tell you what I've been reading, and also like let's just talk about genre preferences. I would say like I want to get to know how you read and how I read, and how everything kind of like makes sense in terms of the decisions I make to decide to read a certain book. Does that make sense? In April, I started to read this book called The Success Myth. I remember seeing it at a bookstore in Denmark, and then I just got into it. Since my early 20s, I really got into self-help because I used to be an author. I still am, but I don't actively write books now, but it's mostly in nonfiction, art techniques. So I wanted to kind of tap into that market, and then I was reading about creative advice, art techniques, productivity, optimizing your creativity, things like that. And then eventually I fell into more fictional fiction in general. Like I had a very active Sally Rooney phase in the pandemic, and then I also would read one-offs. Like I think one of my favorite eras was like, I think early pandemic, I got into reading this book called Where'd You Go, Bernadette? And then Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. And then I think I read Convenience Store Woman, and then it kind of morphed into this like, I like it when the main character is a female, and I don't know, is it like women's fiction? So I was not really sure what category or genre I would find myself in, because I'm always like, not really scrambling, but I would say like I tend to hop from one genre to another. When I first got my Kindle, origin story, I got my Kindle in 2022 when I first moved to Berlin. And I remember it was like July or something, and the first book I loaded was actually Miko Kawakami's Breasts and Eggs. I want to say I did not like that book. It was very uncomfortable for me to read. But after that, I actually got more into reading when I started reading Daisy Jones and the Six on my Kindle. So before my Kindle, I actually read on my iPad. I would also read paperback, but since I've been living here, I don't really like having a lot of paperback books and books, like tangible books in general. And I really like reading in bed. Like I usually read in the wee hours of the morning, like 12 midnight. If I can't sleep, I turn on my Kindle. Actually, yesterday, this morning, I woke up at like 3 a.m. and I couldn't sleep. So I was just reading the start of Slow Dance by Rainbow Rowell. I don't know what to make of it. I'm really curious to see how it unfolds. So that's what I've been reading. But yeah, in general, the genres that I've been gravitating towards is this October I started reading romance, but I think I've set my standards with romance now, and I can see through some stories that I really didn't like. I want to say my favorite would be Funny Story by Emily Henry and Romantic Comedy by Curtis Sittenfeld. So those two would be my top two so far for this month. And I think I haven't really found my sweet spot when it comes to reading, because sometimes I wonder if reading fast means it's a good book or I really like it, or I'm reading fast just because I want to get to the end, which I don't know if that's actually a good thing, because I want to enjoy my reading, and I can figure out if I really enjoy it if the way it's written really like resonates with me, or when you kind of reread the sentences and you're like, oh my god, this is like really good, and then I would highlight it and stuff. So there are a lot of books that I actually don't annotate. I just read through it, and then after 3 hours I'm actually done. So I don't know if that's actually counted as like a good reading experience. I'm still like putting myself in this phase of like, how does it qualify to be a good reading experience? Me enjoying the fact that I was reading the book and I was actually like really being super immersed in the story, which is dependable on a lot of factors, not just the fact that I'm holding my Kindle and reading, but it could also be like the time of day or like the storyline, or like if I'm in a really long commute. And obviously in really long commutes, like sometimes so going to therapy takes me like around 45 minutes. When I'm in the train just sitting there, I spend like a good chunk like just in my reading zone, and I really enjoy it. But that doesn't happen all the time, so it really takes me out, and really it depends on what I also have to work on. I noticed that if I don't have a lot of things to work on and then I get into reading, I get more focused into what the story is about. And I don't know if it's bad, but sometimes I feel too attached to the characters and just seeing how things unfold. So yeah, I'm still debating on that front. Like, I want to say recent books that have really like left an impression on me. Last year I read this book called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I think it came out in 2022. It's one of the best fiction books that came out. I really like it. It's by Gabriel Zevin, I think, and it's about game development and a creative partnership, not a romantic partnership, a creative partnership between two childhood friends. And I really enjoy that. I feel very fondly about the book. And it also makes me think, like, does that mean that I have to reread it to feel things more? I don't know. There's just a lot of those questions about like how the reading habit sort of like meshes, like comes into my system, because I think with my habits of being super like chronically online, not that it's a bad thing. I think it's, well, my job really requires me to be chronically online, but I think it really makes me question whether or not reading has been like good or bad, or like, I don't know what the habit has been. But I will say this is the first time in a really long time that I've been reading diligently. So the first week of October I read like 4 books, which was a lot. The second week of October, which was last week, I actually read 2 books. So I want to talk about it quickly. So the first one that I read is entitled Ghosts by Dolly Alderton. I think it's her first fiction book. She's very well known for this series called Everything I Know About Love. I actually tried reading it in 2022 and I couldn't relate to it, so I just DNF'd it. And then earlier this year, a good friend had recommended her other book, which just came out. I think it's called Good Material. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. So Good Material was really good. So I thought, okay, maybe Ghost would be interesting. And as far as I know, the plot mentioned something about this guy liking the main character, Nina, and they are both in their 30s, and then they, you know, start dating, and then he starts to ghost her after like 3 months. So that's kind of the main plot of the story. And then there are some subplots. And I am well aware this is not romance in general. It feels like a discussion also of millennials live in their 30s, like aka me, and like the whole idea of being single, and also like not you know, everyone kind of living their lives, like having families, getting married, and then you're just like doing your own thing as a woman, which I can highly relate to at the moment. So I thought the book was I wasn't so interested with the side characters. I think that's just me, because there's something to be said about reading a book and realizing how close it feels to your own life. And I think I would like to kind of draw the line with that, because I don't know if I want to read things that, but I could relate. Like, I annotated so much and I felt really like, oh, this is what it must feel like, or like this is what it must be like at this age, doing this, doing that. Also, the main character is more or less like an author and an influencer, so I was like, oh, it's kind of like the same-ish job that I've been kind of in this realm for quite some time now, so I could relate. But there's something about like the way it was written that I felt bad, you know. I kind of skimmed through a lot of the subplots with the friendships and the families and all the other side characters. I think it just didn't resonate with me how I wanted to, as much as I wanted to. Obviously it's a me thing, not the author thing, but yeah, I don't know if I really liked it. Towards the end I did like how it ended, but I don't consider it as a good book that I thoroughly enjoyed. I think it was one of the books where, you know, when you're reading, you're kind of like in this like flow state, I would say. And this book kind of was like up and down. Like I would go to the flow state and then I'd then sink down and then I'd just like breeze through like this chapter and then I go again to the flow state, and then towards the end I'm like, this was a bit exhausting to read. So I think it took me like longer to read that, because that took me until like probably like Tuesday to Friday or something, where I was reading it on and off, and I couldn't get myself to get my Kindle, especially after the work day. I tried to like, after dinner, I'm just like picking up my Kindle and I'm just reading, but I didn't do that for quite some time. So I think the book just didn't sit well with me in general. The next book that I read is, so after that I was like, wait, I needed something light. So I went back into my Emily Henry rabbit hole and I was picking which plot that I wanted to focus on, and then I picked Book Lovers because I love publishing and I like the whole lore of publishing, and any TV show or film or K-drama. There's this K-drama called She Was Pretty, super nice. It's about publishing. Yeah, TV show, anything that like has like books, publishing, authors, editors, I really like it because I know how it works somehow. So I read it and I finished it in a day, I think, or 2 days, but I didn't like it as much. Even if the setting was set in New York and North Carolina, it had like Stars Hollow, Gilmore Girls vibes. Apparently, according to Goodreads, there was like a bit of like Schitt's Creek vibes too, which I love Schitt's Creek, like the TV show, but I didn't sit well with it. Maybe it was something about it's not Grumpy Sunshine, and I have been watching like, I've been like learning, I've been doing my own deep dive. I've been learning about the different tropes of romance, and I actually decided like probably after this phase I'll probably get back into reading more heavier stuff, because it just feels like I don't think I can like let's say I read like romance for like, I read 10 romance titles. I feel like at some point I'm gonna saturate my own preferences and like feel like I'll get into a tipping point and be like, oh, I don't want to read anything romance anymore. It's kind of like watching a set of movies, or like listening to the same genre of music. So with movies, I watch rom-coms like as my comfort movies, but I actually really prefer coming of age and like biopics. My whole lore about that is like, I like watching biopics because I want to see how other people live their lives, so I can take a page out of their notes and like kind of figure out how I can like get inspired by how people have lived their lives. That's why I like history a lot. But with music, it's also the same. Like I listen, my go-to is like indie, like what's the Haim, The Naked and Famous, Bleachers, and then I have pop, you know, Taylor Swift, Avril Lavigne, everything, and I also have Fall Out Boy and everything. So it's like I tend to hop to a lot of genres with these things, but I don't know about books, because I think my bandwidth with books is like, I don't want to be super sucked in. Like I wanted to try to read Dune, but I was like, oh, that's not for me. I think anything that has like a lot of world building and sci-fi, I want to warm up to those, because I may be a visual person, but I'm not very imaginative. Or I guess my brain cells are just too wired, because I do that way too much for my job. So I'm like tired of visual. I just want a fluffy read. So that's why I've been settling with the romance stuff. But yeah, after reading Book Lovers, there's something about the two characters. Like their banters are cute, and they were cute, but I wasn't kilig. What's English of kilig? I didn't feel anything. Like usually when I watch movies, I kind of feel like, oh my god, this is so like, oh, they're so cute. I didn't feel anything. I was more like, okay, what happens next? And it always feels like it's that like, oh, they're at the bar, and then like, oh, she starts to feel dizzy, and then she starts to kind of, then he catches her. Like it's kind of typical, and I'm not saying that it should be not typical, but it just feels a bit too cliche, and I didn't know if I liked that more as... I think I just like the roommate trope. That's why Funny Story like was really like top tier for me. So now I'm like, okay, I need to pause on Emily Henry books, and I think I need to pause on romance for a bit. One of my friends, Amber, recommended Abby Jimenez books, but I think they're all like interconnected, so I'm kind of... It's either I'm looking into that, or one of my friends, Leah, what did she suggest? She suggested this book called They're Going to Love You, and it feels more like historical fiction, which I think I could get my hands on because I wanna, you know, kind of diversify a bit. What is here? Yeah, They're Going to Love You by Meg Howry. And then I have this other one that I got a sample of. It's called Okay Days by Jenny Mustard. So yeah, there has been like a bunch of like different types of books here. I'm still deciding when I'll actually get into Intermezzo. Intermezzo is Sally Rooney's new book. I really like Normal People and Beautiful World, Where Are You? So I might get into that at some point. But right now I've started Slow Dance by Rainbow Rowell, and Slow Dance is basically about two people who have been childhood friends, and I'm right now at the start of it, so it actually puts them in perspective of like them being in their friend's wedding and then meeting after so long. And it's written in third person POV, which I don't know if I like, but the reason I might prefer it over first person is that there's like both of them, like the narrator is like observing them from a distance. So yeah, I will see how that goes, and maybe I'll do an update next week. But I just started like 2 chapters, I think, so it's still a long way to go, but I'm really looking forward to read after work today. But yeah, I would love to know what your reading habits are, your preferred genre. You can comment either of these, and like how you feel a book can be associated as like a good read for you. Like, how is the reading experience? How do you define your reading experience? I think it's safe to say that it's similar with like being a viewer and like watching a movie, and how that kind of impacts your opinions and also how you perceive watching films or like consuming media in general. I do feel like books are the most quiet media because you're like reading and it doesn't require you a lot of stimulation, but it really requires a lot of thinking, which I'm still like kind of getting used to, especially when you're like super deep into a book and then you have to kind of snap out of it and then live life, and then like, oh, I have to work, I have to do this, I have meetings. So it's really interesting to see how everything kind of goes together. But yeah, that's kind of the thought process I've been having at the moment. So if you'd like to share your opinions about things, let me know in the comments. And I think I'm gonna publish a Substack essay one of these days. Probably not about books, but in the same realm. But I've also been figuring out how to get, like, with YouTube, apparently you have to verify some stuff. That's why I haven't been able to put links on my description and everything. I also don't have a Goodreads because Goodreads kicked me out ever since they merged with Amazon. And I used to have an author page and I used to log all my readings, but now I cannot log in. I think it had something to do with like my Goodreads being connected to Facebook. I don't know. It's such a faff for me right now, so I haven't really gotten into that. But if you want to see the books that I've been reading, I do post it on my main account on Instagram, and I have a highlights and I just updated the reviews, and you'll see me update there as often as I can. So I hope you enjoyed this quick update. Not so quick. I probably yapped for about 18 minutes, but yeah, I do hope you have a great weekend, and let me know in the comments what your thoughts are, and maybe tell me what you've been reading or what's the next 2-3 books on your list. I'll see you soon. Bye!